Okay, so this week, English 302 class, I wanted to elaborate, or no, I'm sorry, wrong class. I wanted to challenge, also take a look at some relational and hypothetical themes throughout Breaking Open the Head. The author Daniel talks about Shakespeare and every other playwright similar to Shakespeare being basically a distraction from your everyday lives. And I wanted to challenge that because he speaks about a distraction from a distraction, like basically, people trying to escape. And not that I don't think it's true. I just want to challenge it because he brings it up as if Shakespeare was the first person or, first one to do this after, psychedelics were basically considered wrong and devilish and really, really bad. But even before then, the Romans, they had jousting, the Romans, they had their huge arenas with, so that, the playwrights weren't the first ones to do that. So, I just want to throw that out there. On page 92, I want to talk a little bit about relational. Relate the Burning Man, event that the author goes to and discovers. I wanted to relate that a little bit to Woodstock and things that I'm more familiar with, events and happenings that I've heard of before, especially growing up in California. You always hear about Woodstock, and you even hear mentions of Burning Man too. And so I appreciate that he put that in there because it gave me a little bit more clarity on it. But I wanted to basically relate it to like the little tiny Burning Mans that, people have. Like here in California, there's a lot of rave clubs and different things like that. And even on the East Coast, they have their, club music and house music, and they go there and they, free to express themselves, and it's all lights and colors and things like that. So they're not, as huge scale as Burning Man, but they're everyday. They're just like everyday little tiny Burning Mans that people have, or they go to experience, once a month or once a week or however often they attend those events, So I wanted to relate that to those because it's on a much smaller scale than Burning Man, of course. But I did want to bring that up and relate the two because it's people's form of escape, and it's their way to, drop their ecstasy or whatever drugs they're going to do, or even if they don't do drugs, they're going to, express themselves in whatever way they see fit. And so that's really what I wanted to relate. And then I also want to hypothesize a little bit, or hypothetical. Okay, so I wanted to talk about hypothetically. The author talks about basically on page 100, it says disbelief in any spiritual reality is also a belief system. And so he talks about how, people, they're so cynical and, they're like, well, we don't believe in this and we don't believe in that. But that in itself is a belief system. And he talks about how himself and also his friend that died they've never known any type of spirituality. And I wanted to just hypothetically look at, had he or his friend known spirituality, what would have come of their lives? What would have changed, or what might have been different? We might not even be reading this book because he may have never written it because, in certain religious sects, they're, doing drugs is not permitted. So, maybe he would have had that spirituality and that openness that would have quenched his thirst that he has for these psychedelic drugs. And so I just wanted to hypothesize a little bit about how we may or may not be reading this book, and he may not have had the relationship with the people that he's met. And then also he may have had a closer relationship to his father that passed because, maybe they would have been closer together as far as their relationship, and they would have been more available to speak to one another in regard to their thoughts and their ideas. And so he might have been able to bond with his father even more. So just my thought.